pressure, in trouble, hit and dropped. It's Micah Parsons again.
What is going on, everybody? NFL Week 15 in the books, which means we are here with my Week 16 NFL Power Rankings show. As we get started here, if you could do me a huge favor, please do hit that like button down below and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss my weekly Power Rankings, all my other NFL analysis, and NFL Draft content now just around the corner. Very excited for that. But let's go ahead and get started at the very bottom tier of the rankings. The booty tier. Gonna go pretty quick through these teams, I think, this week. Not a whole lot of news and notes from our bottom teams this week, at least. Number 32, the Las Vegas Raiders, continuously uncompetitive. And that was no different this week, getting trounced by the Eagles. They really have turned into a nice little get-right game for whoever their opponent is each week at this point. And then at number 31, the New York Jets, as they are now rolling with Brady Cook. You know, this team is cooked. Aaron Glenn fires his defensive coordinator. You know, never a great sign when the guy gets brought in as a defensive coach and he fires his defensive coordinator right away. A lot of red flags with the Aaron Glenn coaching regime. And this team's kind of going in the opposite direction after showing some life there. But they fall down 5 spots, actually, this week. They're struggling, as are all these teams. The New York Giants at number 30, they lose to the Commanders, though I don't think Giants fans are mad about that. Big deal for draft positioning and divisional draft positioning there against the Commanders. But then at number 29, the Cleveland Browns staying put in this spot. It's fun to at least see Myles Garrett inch closer and closer to that sack record. Hell, he even thought he got it this week. We'll continue to evaluate Shedeur Sanders, who didn't have a whole lot going on this week in a blowout loss against the Bears. Then we have the Arizona Cardinals at number 28. They get blown out again, and I've been saying this for a few weeks now, like those mid-season Cardinals that had a horrible record but were still pretty frisky and losing every game by a field goal. We've now seen, 3 blowouts from this team in the last 4 weeks, I think, if my memory serves me right there. But certainly another one this week, as it was a non-competitive effort against the Texans. They were down 10-0 like 15 seconds into this game, I'm pretty sure. Maybe a little bit more than that, but that's what it felt like. By the time I first saw a play from this game on my red zone screen, it certainly was 10-0. Then we have the Tennessee Titans at number 27, actually climbing up a spot. I do think this team has an ounce of competency behind them with some of the things they're building with Cam Ward and the offense and these playmakers as they kind of just try to get through this season. Obviously, they fall to 2-12, not really all that close against the Niners. Then we have the Washington Commanders at number 26, kind of a tough team to figure out right now. Like, you rewind a couple weeks ago and they were actually like really competitive against the Broncos. Then they just get deleted by the Minnesota Vikings, and then this week they show up again and play the Giants. So I think with a team that, as we've talked about, really is lacking that roster talent, it's all about what week do they want to show up? Are they bringing that energy and the play hard vibes for Coach Quinn? But that's going to round out our booty tier. We are now going to climb up to our next tier here, and this is the frisky tier, but this week I'm going to call it the spoiler alert tier. Now that we are really narrowing in on the playoff picture, all of these teams are eliminated except for one of them has like a 0.5% chance of making it, but you know, I think you get the point. These are, though, teams that are a cut above that booty tier, and if you are, playing big, meaningful football games, trying to get into the playoffs for our higher-ranked teams, these are the squads that have a chance to play spoiler and maybe knock you out of the playoffs, and that's kind of starting with the New Orleans Saints right now, kind of the definition of that, right? Back-to-back weeks now, they have beat the Bucs and the Panthers, that NFC South. We need a nickname. There's not really a word I can think of that rhymes with South. It was great when the NFC East sucked. The NFC Least was so perfect. If you guys have a good nickname for the NFC South right now, I'd love to hear it so I could apply it to my analysis. But hey, it's definitely feel-good vibes if you're a Saints fan. I mean, I certainly didn't think they would get to 4 wins on the season, and that might still be climbing. Tyler Shuck if it wasn't confirmed before this, but with another win and another win where Tyler Shuck just looks the part as a rookie quarterback. I can't say a young QB necessarily, but you guys know I'm a big fan of Tyler Shuck if you've been around this channel. It's really fun to see him ramp up the competency of this football team and making some big plays in big moments, whether it's scrambling or making the tough throws. It's cool too. Like, he's attacking all aspects of the field. He's really playing a complete brand of quarterback right now. But what I'm saying is, if it wasn't a lock before this week, it is even further now that he's going to be their quarterback next year. They will not be drafting one this year, maybe at all, but certainly not in the first round. And Chase Young, too, needs a shout-out, man. He's playing closer this season to what he was supposed to be coming out. Not maybe full-blown blue-chip superstar, all that, but he's been a legit number one edge rusher and probably the best player on this football team outside of maybe Chris Olave, but I think you'd still put Chase Young for this season alone. But then you got the Kansas City Chiefs at number 24. We'll see kind of like, how much fight do they even put out there? Do they start to mix in some younger players and kind of get weird with the rest of this year? Obviously, it's a unique situation when you've had the team success that they've had, and now your season's done with a month to go. This could just look different than the way the rest of these teams are treating the end of the season. Wouldn't be horribly surprised if that's the route they go and they're just not all that competitive down the stretch here. But if you're assessing the last couple of games, the defense has been balling out. Chris Jones has been playing really well. They're flying around there, but obviously expecting an offense that was already showing their issues. Now going from Patrick Mahomes to Gardner Minshew, you're going to get a big drop off there too. So it's a -9 for the Chiefs as their season is officially over. And then the Cincinnati Bengals at number 23, they're also falling 4 spots, and along with the Chiefs, they're dropping out of that playoff fringe tier. They have been eliminated in a must-win game against the Ravens this week. They lose it, and kind of lose it in a way you wouldn't have expected, right? I certainly thought that would be a high-scoring affair. I think the over-under was, north of 50 points as well, and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins all played against a bad Ravens defense, and they put a zero burger. Some turnovers and mistakes in Ravens territory, but still not how you expected them to officially go out. And after Burrow's comments this week, obviously there's some noise around this team now as they will be focusing on this offseason. Is this team really in a position where Joe Burrow wants to put his body on the line again next year? The narratives, I haven't even really had full time to process, and how much I believe that Burrow might get traded or retire or anything like that. But there's definitely going to be a lot of people talking about it. That's for damn sure. But one thing is also for certain, and that's the Bengals got a lot of work to do this offseason. Before we go to my next team here, I want to thank the sponsor for today's Power Rankings, SeatGeek. Now, of course, SeatGeek has you covered for basketball and hockey and concerts and all of that, but I want to remind you guys, there's only a month left of this NFL season, and then for us NFL diehards, it's back to the dog days of not being able to watch our favorite football teams. Maybe you want to go catch your team play in person, catch a ball game, have some fun, hear the roar of the crowd, see some of those superstar players you've always wanted to see in person. And when you go to get those tickets, SeatGeek has got you covered with the best app, the best user interface. They color code every single seat on their listing, so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Just look for those green dots. You know you're getting a good deal. You're already going to the right place and getting the best prices on your seats when you buy on SeatGeek. But if you use code TFG10 at checkout, you will save up to $20 as well on top of that, and you'll support my channel in the process. So that's code TFG10, and thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. But our next team here is the Miami Dolphins, who we just watched on Monday Night Football. I kind of wonder if the owner buzzed down in the second half of that game against the Steelers. Like, hey, let's huddle up and not lead a comeback here. That was one of the weirdest. I agreed with Buck and Aikman on the call. Like, why are they letting this clock go down to 2 seconds every single snap? Like, they're down 28-9 with like 14 minutes to go. The game's not over yet, but they certainly were acting like they were down by 30 points. really weird, especially because in the first half of the game, it felt like they were playing physical and like they meant it. And that game meant something to them. So I don't really know what to make of that quite yet. Reacting to this about an hour later, but their season officially done, though it was already done if you were being realistic. I don't know, man. I'm ready to move on to the offseason for the Dolphins, though, because I'm curious to see if they do something about quarterback there. I think they did overall find some elements of physicality to this team. The run defense was damn solid this year and got better as the year went on. They headed into this Steelers game ranking 7th in run defense DVOA. That's much better than you expected from them heading into the year. And I think with the offensive line and Achane and some of the physicality they played with on that side of the ball too, you at least accomplished something this year. I think things could have been worse for Miami, but now I think, especially with how the energy they showed in that fourth quarter, it's going to be hard to find anything really to say about this team until we get to the offseason. I would love to see Zach Wilson, I think. Just why not, right? He hasn't played football in 2 years. The physical talent's in there. We've seen Darnold and Geno and Baker and Daniel Jones and all these guys get better as the years go on. Tua's not your guy. Why don't you just throw Zach Wilson out there and see what happens? What's the worst that could happen? But let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons at number 21. Kind of a feel-good week this week. They take down a division opponent on Thursday Night Football. Kyle Pitts balling out. A lot of talk about who's going to pay him in free agency. I imagine he's going to be back in Atlanta with him playing the best ball of his career the last few weeks. He looks really nice out there. And then it's also pretty wild how Kirk Cousins has all of a sudden turned into like exactly what they need as a potential bridge quarterback next year. I'm still not a big believer in Raheem Morris and this coaching staff at large, but they need someone to take snaps next year if Michael Penix isn't going to be available to start the year. And then at some point, you're going to want to get another look at Michael Penix. I mean, you can't really get rid of that Kirk Cousins contract, but maybe as a bridge starter for them next year, like I said, all of a sudden he makes a lot of sense on this Falcons team next year. But he's playing well, man. The arm looks pretty good. He's getting much more comfortable with this offense as opposed to when he first stepped in off the bench. And I think more comfortable with that Achilles. So, I've always been a big fan of Kirk Cousins. It's good to see him, show some life out there and maybe throw his name into the ring to be a starter for the Falcons or somebody else next year. And it's a +3 for the Falcons from this week. It's a nice feel-good week for the Falcons, and you don't even have your first-round pick, so winning is just fine for this team. Then at number 20, the Dallas Cowboys, one of the more disappointing, if not the most disappointing teams this week. They did have a fighter's chance at sneaking it into the dance, but not anymore. Once the Eagles beat Washington on Saturday, which I fully expect will happen, they will be officially eliminated from the playoffs. But the last 2 weeks, this Cowboys defense has taken a full role reversal from some of the mid-season good vibes, right? They go get Quinnen Williams, they get Overshown back, and they were playing much more capable defense. Not necessarily good or great defense, but not what it was to start the year. Well, you meet a couple of familiar NFC North opponents and coaches, and Kevin O'Connell this week, and last week, Dan Campbell and the Lions, and they knew exactly what Matt Eberflus was going to throw at them defensively and completely lit this defense up. And then offensively, look, love what Dak's doing. Love these receivers. I like what they've got going with Brian Schottenheimer and Javonte Williams and the interior of that offensive line, but they really have some tackle problems. And I know they're not healthy, but you got a couple of first-round picks. I would not want to head into next season looking at Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele as your only options at tackle. Just both those guys are untrustworthy to me. I know Guyton maybe could still develop, but they're not, through the woods and perfect offensively either. And they ran into some pretty major issues this week against Minnesota there, who Minnesota is going to be our 19th ranked team here, a +4 here for Minnesota. They get their second win in a row. And considering where this team was at a month ago and where conversations were at with them and JJ McCarthy, probably not a non-playoff team that is generating as much hope for next season, which hope and Minnesota sports is an infamous combination, but it's legit. I mean, JJ McCarthy, 22 going on 23 years old, learning how to play football in the NFL a little bit more. And I think they're doing a better job offensively to rein things in a little bit, play action boots, getting him some easier schemed up looks. And yeah, playing the Commanders and Cowboys defense is going to help you, but he's making the throws and maybe more importantly, not turning the football over and starting to play a little bit faster. I don't think the tape's been insane on McCarthy. I think this last week was better than the Commanders game that was pretty streamlined and pretty straightforward, but anything that's a neutral to an above average game is a massive step in the right direction for such a young QB that looked as bad as he did to start. So that's obviously all good to see. And then, man, Brian Flores and this defense, they have fully captured all of the hype that we had on this team heading into the year with the things we talked about with this defense, man. And I mean, this team is 6-8 despite all of the ugliness they've had this year. So many of these wins have come thanks to great performances from this defense. And, I think if you're a Vikings fan, especially if you're able to keep Brian Flores another year, you can talk yourself into being much more competitive in 2026. And as we sit here today, I do think they are at the peak of these spoiler teams, not just in terms of potency, but in terms of schedule as well. They just did it to the Cowboys, and they still have the Lions and Packers on the schedule too that are vying for playoff positioning as well. And this is a much better version of the Vikings than had you gotten to play them maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago. But that is going to round out that tier, obviously. Let's now go to my third tier, the playoff fringe teams. And we begin this tier with the playoff fringe team of all playoff fringe teams, the freaking Carolina Panthers. Man, this team is exhausting, are they not? And I'm just so disappointed in everything about this football team this week. And I was disappointed when they had a chance to, prove that they were real and go to San Francisco a few weeks ago and take that division. But that was a different ask, right? This was so much different. All this was go beat the Saints as favorites coming off the bye week. And just like in that Niners game, they just refuse to show up when you are ready to buy into this team. It's exhausting, and it's a little bit of everything too, right? Like, I think Dave Canales, say whatever you want about Bryce Young, and you can say very negative things about him and his play at large this season. I think the last 5 or 6 weeks, Bryce is playing overall better starting caliber quarterback. Nothing special, but Dave Canales has completely bottled up this offense. They are second in the NFL in first down run percentage, yet they're 30th in first down play action percentage. Like, that is the antithesis of the idea of a Shanahan-style offense, which Dave Canales comes from that background. The whole idea of marry the run and pass, be unpredictable on early downs and scheme things up and get explosives. That's what their playbook is, but all they're doing is just running the football and folding up. And Bryce Young has thrown the ball more than 30 times just once since week 5. That was when he threw for 450 yards and went and beat the Falcons. And just twice since week 5, he's thrown more than 25 times. That's so few passing attempts. It is insane how conservative they have been. And that's not even diving into second and third down screens and draws and, just running into brick walls on 4th and inches. I understand if you have some hesitations with Bryce Young, but the way I put this on Twitter is, look, this team at this point, they're either going to sink or swim with Bryce Young no matter what happens, but you at least have to take the car out of neutral. This team is playing entirely scared. I mean, they're coaching like they're the New York Jets, and they're down to their 4th-string quarterback, and they're just trying to survive the season. Like, it's just the inability to take that next step, and I think the lack of confidence in this passing game, whether it's justified or not, I do think it actually hurts their number one, development as a passing offense, because they're just not getting those reps. But I think it hurts their confidence as well when their own coach doesn't believe in their passing game. that's what stands out the most about this team. Defensively, like, they're going to be inconsistent. They just don't have a pass rush. We knew that heading into the year. They folded at the end of that Saints game, but for me, it was much more about this team's inability to put the Saints away with their offense. That was frustrating. And what's at the end of the day so frustrating about this Panthers team is they very well might still win this division, man, because our next ranked team is the other team they have to get in front of, and it's the Tampa Bay Bucks. And this team is coming off of losses against the Saints and Falcons as well. And I mean, we get to see this matchup this week, and then again in Week 18. Now, those two games will decide this division, obviously. But the Bucks aren't playing well. I rank them ahead of Tampa because I, at the end of the day, just trust Baker and these wide receivers, which it was fun on Thursday Night Football to see all those guys get back out there. Felt like all of a sudden you go from a Sunday to a Thursday and they snapped their fingers and they got all their receivers back. That was almost like kind of snuck up on me a little bit. I was like, oh man, even McMillan is back out there, let alone Mike Evans is back. But this team's got problems, man. I mean, Todd Bowles cannot get this defense under control. They're just bad. Like, they don't stop the run well. They don't rush the passer. Their secondary is constantly banged up. I don't think they're consistently doing things, schematically speaking, that are, throwing teams off. And offensively, I mean, Baker's just not playing well. He's missing throws. He's turning the football over. He's getting finicky in the pocket behind, an offensive line that's had their issues this year. And they're just so inconsistent themselves. So this NFC South is very frustrating. I am excited to see who ends up winning this one. I've got the Bucks edging out the Panthers here, but we're obviously going to figure this one out here in the next couple of weeks. But then the Indianapolis Colts are at number 16, and they did lose against the Seahawks, but they obviously got tanked last week. It was a -10 when they lose Daniel Jones, and then we had no idea what was going on with Phillip Rivers and all this stuff. Was he going to start this week? How was he going to look? We learned some new stuff about Phillip Rivers and the Colts, and I would say, considering how bad things could have looked, especially against this Seahawks defense in Seattle, like, I was actually really excited to get to watch Phillip Rivers again heading into the week, but when I saw the matchup, I was like, oh, that's not going to end well. And I don't know. I thought the arm looked okay. He actually made a couple of nice out routes and a nice throw over the middle of the field. It was like, hey, that's accurate, decent velocity, like NFL throw right there. Like, I watched Tua on Monday Night Football. Phillip Rivers has better arm than Tua at 44 years old. So at least there's that. But it was a reminder, like, hey, they can run the ball and, muddy things up if they need to with all the talent they have offensively. And you got to credit the Colts defense too. I think that was the most I've been impressed by the Colts defense this year, and that was without Sauce Gardner and DeForest Buckner. Just a bunch of different dudes stepping up, and I think Lou Anarumo had one of those kind of vintage, I remember all those Bengals playoff games where Lou Anarumo was just mixing stuff up and confusing offenses with good blitzes and manufacturing pressure. Really felt that in this Colts game. So with a bunch of other teams dropping out and falling down, teams like the Chiefs, Bengals, Cowboys, the Bucks and Panthers all lost. The Colts did lose, but they're the only team out of those 5 that I just rattled off that I actually feel better about this week than I did last week. So they get a +5 here in the rankings. And at 8-6, it's not looking good as far as the playoffs go because there's a bunch of these double-digit wins teams in the AFC at this point. It's going to take a damn miracle for them with the Niners, Jags, and Texans still remaining on the schedule. But I do expect this team to go down swinging. And, I think Phillip Rivers with another week with the offense, I think that's only going to help. And, they don't have to play the Seahawks defense again. They do have to play the Texans Week 18. But at least the next couple weeks, Niners, Jags, I expect this team to put up a fight. And I loved what we saw effort-wise from this defense. So maybe they can keep things afloat here with a win against the Niners. Should be a fun game coming up here on Sunday. But then at number 15, the Baltimore Ravens taking down the Bengals 24-0. I mean, really good to see that defense step up, right? And the player I'm going to shout out first is certainly not who I expected to be shouting out here, but Draymond Jones, who this team acquired at the deadline. I really dismissed that trade. Draymond Jones has been a nothing burger for years in Seattle and even Tennessee this year when the Ravens acquired him. I was like, I mean, he's a nice rotational piece, but that's not going to fix their pass rushing problems. And I'm not saying their pass rushing problems are fixed, but man, he was all over Joe Burrow in this game. He was a major impact player. And if something's clicking there, that could be a world of difference just to have somebody up on that front that can get you a couple, 2 or 3 impactful pressures a game. Ultimately, this team's not going to be shutting out opponents every single week. It's just not realistic with how deprived of talent their front seven is. Unless Draymond Jones does get you 7 pressures every week or 6 pressures, whatever it was. But Lamar looks healthier than he's looked in a long time here. Really moving around and showing the pocket presence and making stuff happen. They got Zay Flowers going. A little bit more, Derrick Henry running. Now it was the Bengals defense, so I don't want to overreact to anything with this Ravens team. But obviously, it's a feel-good week. You buried the Bengals. You got right in the position you need to be, a game behind the Steelers with that Week 18 game on the schedule. But the Ravens do have some tough matchups coming up. It's Patriots, Packers, Steelers, so they're going to be tested. I think at this point, you're probably favoring the Steelers, who are going to be my number 14 team here. But again, this AFC North is going to be a very fun race down the stretch, obviously. But for those 14th ranked Steelers, I don't want to just entirely dismiss this. I think Aaron Rodgers the last couple of weeks has really been a pleasant surprise after that midseason stretch where he was banged up. He gets the wrist injury. He was not playing well before that. And it was just like, yeah, this thing is kind of what we feared, where 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, that he has been banged up throughout his career, like this thing is going to fall off a cliff and go real south. He's actually really toughened up and played his best football, or some of his best football, the last couple weeks. I think last week especially against the Ravens was the best game we've seen from the Steelers version of Aaron Rodgers, and I thought he did enough in this game to take that lead against the Dolphins, and eventually, they stepped up as a team and fended them off. But I think there's something to be said about the style of offense they play with Darnell Washington and Spencer Anderson and Jalen Warren toughing it out this week, but physical runner and DK Metcalf, man, that touchdown he had against the Dolphins, one of the plays of the year. That was freaky, just moving and throwing defenders to the ground. That was crazy. But yeah, there's some stuff to like for the Steelers team, and the defense had a little bit of an edge against the Dolphins too. I'm not ready to trust them on that side of the ball too, but there is maybe a little bit of that Steelers DNA, cold weather, outdoor football still in there maybe. But yeah, I've got the Steelers at number 14 at the peak of the playoff fringe. And now we will go to my second tier, and I'm going to do this the same way I did it last week, where this year the playoff race really does just feel particularly open. Yes, some of the teams at the top and in my tier 1 should be favored as Super Bowl teams and in some of these matchups, but I really think getting into the dance means more than ever this year, and we could see some craziness in the playoffs. And I'm tiering these teams as all kind of teams that maybe could win the Super Bowl in the framework of this year's NFL. But certainly this second tier are your more flawed playoff teams, where you can point to some specific issues that are very likely going to hold them back, as opposed to our top tier, which are less flawed playoff teams. I like categorizing them this way. But at number 13, the Chargers. And they've been sticking around this spot now for a few weeks. I can't possibly imagine, if you told me before the season started that the Chargers were going to have Week 15 and Week 16 wins against the Eagles and Chiefs, I can't possibly imagine that I would be as underwhelmed by those wins as I have been by the Chargers. I think it embodies everything about this team, where they're going to drag you into a dogfight and they're going to capitalize on mistakes, and they're going to try to find ways to win close games and be that tough, physical Harbaugh team. And Jesse Minter in this defense, they're doing a really good job scheming some stuff up. There's a lot to give credit to this Chargers team and what they're accomplishing with what they've endured this year with those tackle injuries on a roster that already had some pretty serious warts. And that's all great, but I'm not really scared of this Chargers team, and I feel pretty comfortable putting them here as the quote-unquote worst team out of these top two tiers. The offense just isn't very potent right now. It obviously all centers around their offensive line, struggling to buy Herbert time, and not really, asserting themselves in the run game either, to be honest. Not a whole lot of lanes for these running backs to access. But I also it's a tough balance where I don't want to bang on Justin Herbert because the offensive line has been as bad as it is. But surrounding all of this, he's not playing all that well in the last 5 weeks. I do believe that. You're going to get those Herbert moments that have been enough in some of these tight games to pull them out. But there's been some shaky mistakes. There's been... This is where it gets really tough because I understand why he's getting finicky in the pocket and he's starting to scramble a little early. But there are plays where the offensive line does win and he's not able to feel that. And then he starts scrambling and kind of wastes the good plays that are there to be made. It's like he's unable to kind of identify when he does get the right opportunity to sit in the pocket and pick teams apart, as we know he can when he does get protection. So it's tough. I know it sounds like I'm being super critical of Justin Herbert. I think there are legitimate excuses for why he's not playing great, and that's fine. I'm just trying to kind of capture how potent this Chargers offense is and why that is, and that's what I'm seeing. So, number 13 for the Chargers, and then we got the Niners at number 12 still. And I'm excited now to see this team play some real football games. I mean, it's impressive that they keep crushing these bad teams, right? But the last 5 weeks, Titans last week, bye week 14, Browns week 13, Panthers week 12, Cardinals week 11. And even if you rewind 3 more weeks before that, they lost to the Rams and Texans, and there was a win against the Giants in there. So obviously, they're 10-4, and I think it's incredible that they've reached this record with the injuries they've endured this season. And, I love Shanahan, McCaffrey, and Kittle are playing so great. But if I'm being realistic about have the Niners done anything in the last 5 weeks to make me feel better about them, the answer is a hard no. So, upcoming now, we get Colts, Bears, Seahawks. And that's where we get to really gauge if this is Mickey Mouse 10 or 11 win team with maybe some losses coming on the schedule. If they lose out with that schedule, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. But this is an opportunity, kind of reminds me of the Bears a few weeks when they were finally heading into a harder part of their schedule, and they have passed a lot of tests and climbed up in these rankings. This is an opportunity for the Niners to make some noise as we approach the playoffs so that I can view a team that just doesn't have a lot of potent talent on it as a more serious contender beyond, you got Shanahan, you got Robert Saleh, Purdy, McCaffrey, Kittle's a nice combo of players. We'll see where this thing goes in the next 3 weeks. Then we got the Jags at number 11. I looked at this for a while, and I pretty strongly considered them moving them up, but it's kind of hard to find the team remaining to boost them above. But where to slot them in the power rankings is its own issue. I really am trying to stress as hard as I can. I am very impressed by the Jags, and I think they are at the right time shaping up in this AFC to be a very legitimate player in this picture. They've had so many frustrations with their passing game throughout the course of this season, and you've been able to look at the Jags and say, well, they run the ball, they're playing really good defense in their first year under Anthony Campanelli, but Trevor Lawrence has been all over the place with decision-making and accuracy. The receivers haven't been on the same page, you name it, and the last few weeks, dude, Trevor Lawrence has been balling. And if you could promise me he's going to play at this level moving forward, and remember, this is his first year in this Liam Cohen offense. They added Jacoby Myers. Brian Thomas is catching the football again. There's real reason to believe that this is legit. Some of the plays he's made in the last couple of weeks, it is hard not to get hyperbolic and way too excited about this thing. If you're watching, I mean, rolling left, making unbelievable throws, some of the scrambles, the traits that this guy has. We all know why he was hyped up to begin with, and you're seeing it on display the last couple of weeks. So I'm starting to get really excited about this team because they've become a really complete team now with the gains in their passing game. They're a new team, right? First year of Liam Cohen. They're very untested in all of that, but there's a lot to like with this team. So it hurts me a little bit that there wasn't a clear way, a clear team for me to jump them above. I think these next two teams are a little bit tough, and you can make an argument for the Jags over these next two teams, but again, I just want to stress, I really am buying into the Jags and think they could be climbers in these next couple of weeks. And it's going to be a great test this week too at Denver, which that's exactly what you want to see with this hype right now is legitimate playoff atmosphere. How can this team execute and go look? Because, doing it against the Jets and the Colts the week Daniel Jones goes down and, against the Titans and Cardinals, that's one thing. Going to do it at Denver, I don't need to explain that to you guys what that could mean for this team. So very excited for that matchup this week. And then at number 10, this is where I'm going to have the Green Bay Packers. The team that had as devastating of a Week 16 as you could possibly remember. You got a 2-score lead in the third quarter at a really good Broncos team, and the second most valuable non-quarterback in the NFL goes down with the ACL tear. The guy that has been, one of the, just core narrative players of this season was the acquisition of Micah Parsons and the obvious impact he's made. It's, gut-wrenching, tragic, so many adjectives you can throw out here. And it's just the impact this could have on this defense. It could get bad. I mean, it really could. They're already out Devontae Wyatt, who's probably from a pass rushing standpoint, the second best guy on this roster at dissecting one-on-one blocks and getting quick pressures. This is one of the worst secondaries in the league. You look at this game against Denver, Micah Parsons aside, this loss was a straight up continuation of this team's biggest issue this season. And I try not to be over dramatic when I say this. I don't ever remember a secondary so incapable of playing the football. The strategy against the Packers this season has been, it doesn't matter if receivers are covered or not. Just put the ball in the air and good things will happen for your offense. Considering how good the Packers pass rush is, it's insane. It plays tricks on your eyes because it goes against what you think about football. You think you get a pass rush, you force questionable throws, and the DBs capitalize. And this Packers defense all season long, if you watch that Broncos game and you're like, wow, this is crazy. The Packers had like 4 opportunities for interceptions and they didn't come down with any of them. And the receivers are also mossing these guys and making contested catches. That's virtually every week for Green Bay. So you take out Micah Parsons, a defense that I don't think is great at stopping the run. I mean, they've been able to bring some energy in some of these games and be better against the run than you might think. So maybe you can hold some hope, and attach to that. But you got to be worried about things on that side of the ball without, very legitimate defensive player of the year candidate. It was either going to be him or Myles Garrett. Now it's locked in Myles Garrett. So it's a pretty, gloomy outlook for the defensive side of things. And we are going to have to assess what this looks like without Micah Parsons here. And I'm worried about things there. I still think there's a lot going on with this offense. They did get good news on Zach Tom and Christian Watson. Hopefully they can get those guys back out there soon. I mean, coming out of that game, not just Parsons, but it felt like those were going to be serious injuries. And if they lost Tom and Watson, this fall would be even steeper because those are maybe the 2 most important players on this offense outside of maybe Josh Jacobs, who was insane against the Broncos this week. But yeah, this team to me falls right down into teams like the Niners and the Chargers, where it's like, I like the coaching, I like the quarterback play, I like the effort, I like a lot of the stuff that this team does, but without Micah Parsons, they don't have difference-making players. So I think them falling right in this range until we can kind of reevaluate this thing makes sense. But honestly, like, whether you want to rank them 10th or 14th, like, that's fine by me. Whatever you want to do with this team. The only way to really view the Packers is that, look, that loss in Denver, just fast forward your mind 4 weeks ahead, that was your devastating playoff loss. This team's season, when you were talking about them, hopefully in the third quarter of that game, like finishing things, beating that Denver team, competing for the 1 seed and eventually a Super Bowl, Parsons goes down, and we're going to talk about the Broncos. They deserve a lot of credit from this game, but there's no doubt that that Packers team was deflated when that injury happened. Very good chance the game ends differently. Who knows? That's all speculation. But this game aside, Packers had Super Bowl hopes. You're living on a prayer. Just like the Niners, the Chargers, the Jags. It's like, maybe we get lucky and some other teams screw up or have injuries like we just suffered. You know, it's just, you know, the season's done, and then whatever happens moving forward is free house money if you're a Packers fan. That's really the best way to look at it in a week where you're really just trying to cope, and I understand it. So let's go ahead and move on to my number 9 team, another NFC North team. It is going to be the Detroit Lions. Obviously a tough matchup this week at a bad point in your season to draw the Rams in their house right there. I still think a large part of this game, you feel the potency of this offense against a lethal opponent. Just a week ago, this team had a great week against Dallas, and I still think if this team can get in, you don't want to play the Lions. I still view them as a top 10 football team, but I am dropping them 2 spots, and I'm going to take them out of that top tier, which is our less flawed playoff teams. That was probably a mistake on my end because I probably overreacted to a dominant win against the Cowboys and overlooked just how bad this defense is. And I understand they've had some injuries, right? Like their safeties are out. That's tough. But I'm kind of getting tired of hearing about how good the Lions infrastructure is defensively. And I'm talking about everything from coaching to scheme to talent acquisition. Yes, it's harder when you lose good players on your defense. That is obvious, but the Lions uniquely have entirely failed, and this goes back to last year. And remember what happened in the playoffs against Washington and down the stretch as this defense fell apart. The Lions' unwillingness to change their brand, to adapt, to having to have backups in the secondary, at this point, it's on them. Again, is it easy when you lose your safety duo? No, it's not. But to still, with a bunch of backups in the secondary, to be second in the league in cover 1 and consistently basically take the cheese. I mean, the Rams in this game, they were licking their chops knowing all year long, this is what the Rams have done. They come out in 13 personnel. They want you to match that in base so that they can stretch the field and crush you in the vertical passing game. And the Lions just couldn't help themselves. They see 3 tight ends on the field. They're like, all right, let's get all the linebackers out there. Let's load up the box. Let's stop the run. And the Rams are like, great, we're going to pick this apart. This is such a predictable scheme. The identity was fun for a long time, but there's no nuance and no adjustments. I don't think they're well coached on that side of the ball. They're not creative. And look, Brad Holmes, great GM, has not done a good job replenishing this defense. All of their cornerback investments have been failures. Obviously, Rakestraw, their second-round pick, has been entirely unavailable. I'm not going to totally fault them for that. Terrion Arnold has missed some time, but he's been really bad when he's played. DJ Reed's looking like a disastrous signing. He looks like he can't really hold up anymore. They've done nothing to improve this defensive line around Aiden Hutchinson. They drafted a 3rd nose tackle in the first round. Goes back to everything I said about them leaning so far into their identity that it's hurting them. They don't have another guy. Unfortunately, Ali McNeil hasn't fully emerged as that guy this year. So this defense stinks, man. And they're in a really tough spot with an offense that if they get down 2 scores and they can't do their run game thing, they can create their explosives offensively, right? And Jared Goff was really good in this game. But their interior offensive line and even their tackles at times. Penei Sewell lost a couple times to Byron Young in this game, but especially the interior of the offensive line. It's a huge issue if this team gets from behind and has to, get into shootouts. So this team has their issues, man. They're incredibly explosive. They can hang against anybody, but you can definitely exploit some aspects of this team. That's for sure. But then at number 8, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to climb up 2 spots in the power rankings. They did exactly what I expected they would against a Division II Raiders team. I think if I go back to my weekly preview analysis for the Week 15 preview show with my co-host, Football Analysis, shout out Garrett. But I think my analysis on this game was I expect this to be the first game that is over in that time slate, and that's exactly what happened. It felt like they were in the 4th quarter by the time a lot of the other games went to halftime. I said expect 40 total rushing attempts and under 20 passing attempts for Jalen Hurts. Get back to what they do. It's exactly what happened. So they took care of business. But am I taking anything away from that really against the Raiders, who are making everybody look good right now? I'm sorry, I'm not. And honestly, against the Commanders on Saturday, I expect a lot of the same, to be honest. We can talk Week 17 though, after they play the Bills, and reassess where this team is truly at as we approach the playoffs, as that'll probably be their last game of the season. I think they'll probably be locked in to the 3 seed at that point, and probably be playing backups Week 18. But then we have the Chicago Bears at number 7. They took care of Cleveland this week. And I think this was a potential trap game for the Bears against that defense in really cold weather. Especially considering their offensive line going against that Browns defensive line. There were opportunities for the Bears to not come out and look great in this game, and they did. They continued to really do what they've done well, which is run the piss out of the football. Caleb makes some really impressive plays happen and take the football away. And they did their thing and rolled. They climbed 2 in the power rankings, and obviously goes without saying that they didn't want it to happen necessarily. But I know for sure there's not a whole lot of Bears fans sitting around and crying about the Micah Parsons injury, because this is getting real for Chicago now. They get Green Bay this week in their house. They still have to take care of business there, and Detroit coming up Week 18. But, man, I don't even really want to say this team still has a lot to prove, because their season's already been full of green lights and has been even better than you possibly could have imagined. But, man, if they come out and they execute and they finish this season 13-4 or 12-5, and they get the 2 seed in the NFC, I mean, this season is very wide open, as we've said, and things are just getting better and better for the Chicago Bears. Another big game this week. They are actually 1.5-point underdogs against Green Bay. I actually disagree with that. I think they should probably be favored by about a field goal against Green Bay at this point. But yeah, lot to like about this Bears team as they get a +2 here up to number 7. And then at number 6, the Houston Texans, a blowout win against the Cardinals this week. The defense humming, and CJ Stroud in this offense. Just find stuff that works for you, because I've said this before, but this team doesn't need 40 points every week like they got this week. And obviously the Cardinals got some, comeback. They end up with 20 points in this one. If the Texans defense was giving it 100%, that's not going to happen. This was the first time this year an opponent threw for over 200 yards against them, I think. It's just insane what this defense is doing. And with that, like I said, the Texans offense doesn't need to be prolific and give you 40 points every week. But this week it really felt like Stroud and Collins got that locked in, attack the middle of the field chemistry going. They're finding something with this running game. Woody Marks has been good. This week, Jawar Jordan steps up, showing a different style. Their offensive line's been much improved. This Texans team has really generated the perfect storm to turn into not just a spoiler in the AFC, but as much of a team that I could see winning the Super Bowl as anybody. I'm not quite ready to take that leap with them and put them in the top tier. They're obviously getting closer and closer and closer, finishing off this second tier here. But up to number 6 now, it's been a hell of a run for this Texans team that I don't really see stopping anytime soon, like what we're seeing there. But then we have the top 5 teams in my tier 1 of less flawed playoff teams. And I do still have the New England Patriots here. Obviously a very devastating collapse against the Bills in a game that they came out and made a statement and made it look like they were the better team. Certainly felt like for the first half of this game, they were the better coached team, the more physical team. I'm not going to go as far as saying the team with the better quarterback, but certainly things were working with Drake May and everything. We've loved what we've seen from him there. But then the second half happens and the defense just kind of folds and reminds you like, yeah, they got Christian Gonzalez, but there's just not a whole lot of guys that are going to take over the game or slam the door shut on a Josh Allen who's hungry to lead a comeback. You know, you don't have a whole lot of go-to guys from a pass rushing perspective. You don't have a ton of playmakers on the back end. They got a little overwhelmed by James Cook and Josh Allen in this game, genuine superstar talents in this NFL. And you got to at least look at the Patriots offense and just, I think there were, there's just some moments of like, Drake May still has a little bit to prove. And not just that, I even regret leading with that. I stand by it. But there's just like, this is still a young team. There's in the last drive for the Patriots, there's a miscommunication from Drake May and Travion Henderson, these two young entities on this team. It's like, this is why playoff experience and, being a proven commodity and being battle tested in a way that this Patriots team has not been forced to be battle tested this year with their Mickey Mouse of a schedule. So there's some aspects of this team that left them short in that comeback effort against the Bills. But I still think this is a really well-coached team. They played really well against the Bills for the vast majority of this game, and they could have put themselves in a position to win that game and seal the AFC East shut. They still can. They got the Ravens this week, I believe, so it's, not an easy game there, but I think I remember the schedule lightening up after that. Not going to double check that, but I guess you guys can let me know if I'm wrong there. I think they got some cake like Jets, Dolphins, or something to end the year. But anyway, still hoping this team can win the division and walk out of this having split with the Bills and not having to worry about this too much, especially because you're expecting Will Campbell to get back. Big not to have him out there, and you're hoping as well that Milton Williams, their big free agent acquisition, can get back out there, one of those true playmakers on the defense. But then at number 4, the Denver Broncos. Broncos, you get your turn here. It has been, a pretty quiet season talking about the Broncos. There just hasn't been a whole lot of excitement there. They're racking up wins. All their games kind of look the same. I think even most Broncos fans would agree. There just hasn't really been a wow factor about this team, even if it is impressive for them to get to 12-2 and do it beating some good teams along the way. But this week was different. This was, with a screaming bullet, the best game of Bo Nix's young career. Astounding game from him. Had all the answers, making plays with his legs, but hitting throws down the field. I think PFF credited him with 5 big-time throws in this game, and it felt like it watching it. Threading needles on his touchdown passes, fades, rockets over the middle of the field. Again, like improv plays, just everything. Now, there were some throws into harm's way. Like I said, the Packers could have executed upon, but none of them were like egregious mistakes. The worst was probably forcing it on a shot play where Xavier McKinney just straight up drops it. But he more than made up with it, showing genuine upside at the quarterback position that is not often brought into the conversation on Bo Nix, right? Bo Nix typically gets slotted as he's okay, is what he is type of deal. No, like, this is a dude that in this game against Green Bay showed in a big spot. He doesn't just have that clutch factor, which he's had all year, but he's able to make plays that elevate the offense and provide answers. And that's different, in my opinion, from what we've seen from this Broncos team for the vast majority of the season. And, 2.5 quarters doing against a Micah Parsons-led Packers defense. I mean, this game, I know I said if Parsons finishes the game, this game could have gone either way. But even with Micah Parsons, the Packers were struggling to find answers against what Bo Nix was cooking up and getting Cortland Sutton going too. Their best offensive player, that's key. He's outstanding. So love to see that. And obviously this defense is going to do their thing. And they're putting themselves in a position now to get that 1 seed in the AFC. And if you got to go to Denver against that defense and that pass rush, it's not going to be fun for you. It is not. So a +1 for Denver as they keep creeping up towards the top of these rankings and in a big way this week. And then number 3, the Buffalo Bills, who take down the Patriots this week. Second week in a row where Josh Allen's done some really special stuff, really leaning into his legs when this team needs some offensive explosion. Obviously, they have James Cook, and that worked for them this week. But, I think we've seen this from times with the Bills, where when things aren't working, they do just lean into Josh Allen, making plays happen, being that MVP, but also some of the design run game stuff, too, to take over games. And I think there's points maybe earlier in the season against weaker opponents where they don't want to rack up those touches for Josh Allen, and they're smart about it. And then there's times where they're like, no, we need to, and that's gonna provide an X factor for this offense. We're seeing that right now. So they're rolling offensively, as we know they're capable of. Now, defensively, they are what they are to me. They've had some injuries. They didn't have a lot of talent to begin with. I just am not a big McDermott guy. I'm not. I think in the first half of this game was a reminder of the very high likelihood that you're going to be left disappointed by this Bills defense once you get to the playoffs. But when you got Josh Allen at quarterback, you got a run game, you got an offensive line, they can just overwhelm you. And we saw it in this one. They just willed their way to victory in a way that can feel inexplicable at times, but I think that's the true testament to how great Josh Allen is. And at the end of the day, with Mahomes now going down with the ACL injury, Lamar's been what Lamar's been this year. Burrow's not going to be in it. We saw this Drake May, Josh Allen matchup. As great as Drake May has been, there was no doubt in this game that Drake May has to prove that he is of the level of Josh Allen. Despite the Bills' issues, they have the best quarterback in the playoffs. And that can go places, man, especially in this year's format. I will say the pressure is mounting, especially on Sean McDermott, to get it done this year, because you're going to be able to look back on this year, no Mahomes, no Allen, no Burrow in the AFC playoff picture. If they can't get it done, when are they going to get it done? That's my question. But then we have the Seahawks at number 2. Not the most impressive win against the Colts, right? They had to win this one in more of a defensive, slug it out, kick field goals fashion. I really do think we've seen some warts with this offense. The offensive line and Sam Darnold are simply not playing at the level that we saw from the Seahawks in the first maybe 2/3 of the season. And that's going to shrink their margin for error. They don't quite feel like a super-powered team right now. But that defense is outstanding. Their special teams is a real difference maker and has been for large parts of this season, making 6 big field goals in this one, including, I think, a 60-yarder for the win. Very impressive on that side of things. And Darnold, even if you get some sloppiness with him and the offensive line and some turnover-worthy type of mistakes, he can still keep punching. Like, he's got a short memory and he's got a lot of ability in there with a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba to find enough plays and lean into that defense in a close scoring game. So they hold on to the number 2 spot, and then they will take on my number 1 ranked LA Rams in 2 days. Cannot wait. Very much considering going live for this game, by the way. Let me know in the comments down below if you would tune in for that, because I think it'd be a ton of fun. But regardless, the Rams against Detroit this week just continue to check boxes. Man, Matthew Stafford running away with the MVP at this point. Outstanding again, carving up that Lions offense. They ran the ball as well, carving up the Lions defense rather. But they were able to run on that Lions team too. Kyron Williams and the emergence of Blake Corum this year has been, I mean, in a season where everything is going right, there's like so much love and praise to go around. It's like Blake Corum kind of sneaks under the, long list of things going right for this team. But then you see him like every week seemingly generating explosive runs for this team. It's like, God, he's turning into a freaking monster second running back for them. The defense with that pass rush really made Jared Goff uncomfortable in this game. They really have set themselves apart as the clear best team in the league. You can make a very strong case that we actually should take the time to make another top tier just for the Rams. I think if they do beat Seattle handedly here in a couple days, I might have to do that. And by the way, I don't know if I'll have power rankings next week either, because we're going to Chicago to celebrate Christmas with my wife's family. So I probably should have said that earlier, but there's your announcement right there at the end of the video. But I think the secondary's got some warts. I think you can run the ball on this team, but certainly not like you were able to do last year. You're running out of areas. I mean, Devontae Adams goes down with the hamstring injury, but they're hoping he'll be back for the playoffs. You're definitely looking for issues on the Rams with a microscope, whereas the other teams, it's a little bit easier to point at some of their weaknesses. So maybe we do need to go back to putting the Rams in their own top tier. But to be fair, we did that a couple weeks ago, and they went and lost to the Panthers. So there is still that. But they are number one with a bullet right now, and I do expect them to beat Seattle on Thursday. I do. But we'll see where that goes. Thank you so much, you guys, for watching the Week 16 Power Rankings show. Let me know what you think. Am I too high or too low on any of these teams? What do you think of the rankings? All that. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you when I see you. Certainly going to have a Week 16 preview show, per usual, on Fridays at 3 p.m. But the rest of my schedule is a little all over the place these next couple of weeks because we are going to Chicago, like I said, from like Saturday through Tuesday. So that's going to throw a wrinkle in things. You got the Christmas coming up. It's a weird couple of weeks. And I'm starting to watch College Prospects, which takes into, eats into the opportunity to make a lot of content now. So things are a little bit all over the place with content. But like I said, I will see you when I see you. Thank you guys for watching, and cheers.